Okay, well, everyone, please turn off your microphone and we'll begin. Okay. Luca, I don't think I see that yours is off. Perfect. Okay. The point of meditation is to explore and indeed to understand the nature of consciousness. To explore with a view to understanding the nature of consciousness requires examining our conscious experience. But this often means or implies that we need to examine the examiner or to see who the experiencer is. So we will continue the inquiry into the experiencer, into the one who appears to be behind it all today. The meditation today will consist of two parts, as it has last time. Each time we've been basically doing pranayama as a way to concentrate the mind so that it will become easier to explore the nature of consciousness. Today, I would like to start with a 15-minute pranayama meditation, which will seamlessly seg into a 20-minute dialogical or guided meditation. Now, during this 15-minute pranayama meditation, which will be a 5 count in, 10 count out, I would like you to pay very close attention to whenever it's the case that there's any kind of tension, tightness, struggle, fear, panic, powerlessness, lack of control, and so forth. And see whether it's possible to see the rising of the ego self and the falling of the ego self. As you do so, you can sink more deeply into the sweetness, the subtleness, the seamlessness of the breath. So once more, in this case, the invitation is not to move down to a 4-8 count or to a 3-6 count if the 5-10 seems difficult. Can you actually be with 5 in the inhalation and 10 on the exhalation? Can you be with whatever is arising? Okay, so set yourself into a posture, a cushion, a chair, and let's begin. Okay, stay right here. We wish to continue with what the late Douglas Harding once called the science of the first person. After all, who is it that says I? Do the wind chimes say I? Does the physical body say I? Does the universe at large say I? Who is this one that says I? We have seen that thoughts rise and fall, rise and fall. And we have also seen that we, that is I, are not any of these thoughts. I am no thought at all, and I'm not even some fictional entity called the thinker of thoughts. Thoughts simply come and go, mysteriously arising from who knows where and returning also to who knows where. Let it be clear, I am not any thought whatsoever. We have also seen that no matter how strong, no matter how gripping any emotion may be, no matter how much the body can seem to contract while in the presence of a very strong emotion, nonetheless, I am not this emotion or that emotion, or indeed any emotion at all. Therefore, I am not sadness, though the emotion of sadness may arise and may subside. I am not anxiety, though it too may rise and fall. I am not anger, though it also can come and go. I am not disappointment or frustration, worry, or any other emotion. Emotions, or rather emotions, are indeed temporarily in motion while I remain myself. I remain unmoving in my very essence. Let it be clear, I am not any emotion. And we have seen that I am not any of the physical senses, nor am I any physical sense object. I am not any scent or the faculty of smelling. I am not any taste or the organ of tasting. I am not any touch or the organ of touching, nor am I any sight or the organ of seeing, and I am not any sound or the organ of hearing. Yes, all of these occur in the foreground of experience. But I remain the still, glorious background of all sights and sounds and smells and touches and tastes. Therefore, be right here in the very midst of this mystery. If I am not thought, if I am not emotion, and if I am not any physical sense organ or sense object, then who or what am I? Right here, who am I? In the very least, it should be clear that I am awareness. There can be no doubt about this, for even a doubt is a doubt appearing to awareness itself. Hence, it can now be understood that I am aware of thoughts, that I am aware of emotions, that I am aware of visual and auditory and other perceptions. I am the one who is aware of all experience. I am like the very light of experience. The light cast upon all phenomenal experience. But notice as this inquiry goes deeper that it's not only true that I am aware of experience, aware of some object or other. I am also, and more fundamentally, awareness itself, or simply put, pure awareness. That is to say, I am pure awareness in the presence of objects, and therefore I may be called witnessing awareness, and in the absence of objects, and therefore I may be called pure awareness. Hence, right now, sink back into or rest more fully into yourself, pure awareness, letting every experience melt away. Allow every experience, such as the sound of my voice, to be more distant, to fade slightly, and then perhaps finally away. And Sramana Maharshi says, out of great compassion, just be still, or just be stillness. Remain this aware, awake stillness. Notice that any desire arising is a stirring in the stillness. Can you remain as yourself, as the pure awareness that you are? Can you realize that there is no place to go, that there is nowhere to turn, and that there is no need to go anywhere else or to turn aside, because home is right here in the abiding stillness of your very nature. Nothing wanting, nothing lacking, nothing wrong, nothing right, nothing complete, nothing incomplete, all right here. You, pure awareness, in your pristine stillness, know that the highest truth is silence. If mind arises in the form of thought and wanders, do you see that mind is arising and wandering in the very stillness, in the heart of silence? If there arises even a hint or a whiff of restlessness, can you understand right here that that restlessness is arising in the very sweetness of the silence? Pure awareness, utter stillness, sweet silence, pervasive peace. If your eyes are closed, you can open them and move around if that feels like the right thing to do. And I would like to leave these last 15 minutes or so for us to have a little satsang during which you can ask questions about anything related to meditation, practice, this practice, and so forth. So if you feel comfortable doing so, you can turn your video camera on, and we will discuss. Okay, does anyone have any questions?
So this is Srijay. Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. So just again, this was very profound. But my question is really, what is the relationship between the pure awareness and like our like you and me and all the forms? What is the relationship, and ultimately, what is the purpose of existence? Like, why is the purpose to go back to pure awareness and realize that? What is the purpose?
I see. I'll answer your last question, since that seems to be the heart of it. Okay, well, that'll get us a little bit into what these Eastern, if I may speak in a blanket way, what these Eastern teachings seem to say. Yes, the basic suggestion here is that the point of this temporally bound existence is to wake up or realize our true nature. It's called different things in slightly different traditions. So what does waking up mean? Well, waking up refers to what Rama Maharshi once called going back the way you came. When you go back the way you came, you move basically from the formless and the perceptible to the formless, shapeless, colorless, odorless, unmanifest, uncaused, supreme. That's sort of that tends to be the way that the teachings tend to go, and that is called the inward-facing path. That wouldn't be sufficient. Usually, so Zen, for example, has a way of correcting, though, for anyone who wants to stay dualistically in a state of the unborn, a state of the unmanifest. Almost all of them tend to have some way of reintegrating so that this particular form or body mind, ordinarily called Andrew, now becomes a vessel for love or compassion or service. So basically there's a going back to pure awareness prior to the emergence of all forms, and then a going forward so that pure awareness is like a white light through a prism of sorts, and it's properly reflecting the pure light of awareness in all of its words and actions, feelings, and so forth. So that's sort of that's sort of the way that these teachings tend to look. Now, that sounds a little analytical for some people who are maybe a little bit more artistic of sorts. That kind of going back and returning is just one particular way of describing what could be an instantaneous process or could be a lifelong process. So that's a way of talking about the purpose of existence. Roughly speaking, the purpose of existence is to be free of your suffering. So put in different words, it's to be free of all mind-concocted suffering and to be fundamentally of service to all creatures, all beings, selflessly of service to all beings. And that seems to be more or less what the gospel message is in the Bible, so far as I can tell. Seems to be what the Hindu message is, so far as I can tell. Seems to be what Zen Buddhism is suggesting, and so on and so on and so on. Well, we can come back to you, Sri Jay, but that's a wonderful question, but let me see if there are other questions as well. Are there other questions that people would like to ask?
If I could ask a question. So related to this, is there a different role so the meditations you've been going through are more of a contemplative or inquisitive sort when you look into yourself? Is there a different place for something like loving kindness meditation, or are they part of the same thing? So yeah, so you talked about two things. One is the awareness and the second is the service. Should you do both? Is there a place when do you do this, when do you do the other one? Yeah.
Okay. I on the little biography, I called myself a Zen Buddhist just because it's kind of a placeholder, and we do have a kind of our root practice. My wife and I have a root practice. It's in the Rinzai Zen. But a clear, they're all labels, but a clear label nonetheless would be to say that I'm a non-dualist or a panentheist. So I'm interested in the convergence of these traditions on a kind of core set of truths prior to the arising of language. So I say that as a preface to what I'm about to say, because I think that Zen Buddhism, in my view, doesn't have enough to say about compassion. I'm not saying that certain Zen and Chan masters aren't compassionate, but it's not emphasized. So in our practice, I've tended to add in metta or loving kindness as well. So I tend to think of two different basic kinds of practice that are really helpful for those interested in gradual cultivation, as it's called. So one is some form of contemplation of the emptiness or no-thingness of all reality. So the kind that we were doing before is moving in that direction. I didn't go all the way, but it's at least sort of taking away the obvious layers that we tend to make mistakes. We tend to mistake ourselves for being a thinker or being a feeler, etc. So I think that's very important. And then I just pair it. I think it's very important to pair it with loving kindness. So usually the beginning and end of my sitting practice will start with an intention for the sake of all beings, I'm sitting, etc. And then the end will be some kind of metta. And then at various times of the day, I'll do a metta practice. And then if there is any kind of ad hoc arising of a delusion, I don't like this person, I don't like that person, I'm angry about this, I'll basically do some metta right then and there. So it's a discursive meditation that itself is cutting out the delusion at its root. It's a course correcting so that we get into alignment with what the Buddha calls right view. So that's where I stand. It's a very important question for me. I've actually contemplated it deeply. I want to make sure that in my own practice, I'm pretty balanced between prajna, wisdom, if you heard that, you're kind of this deep inquiry into who I am, and metta, compassion, love, service, and so on, so that they're not off kilter. So I'm not suggesting that you couldn't arrive at compassion through an emptiness inquiry alone, but I think it's fairly a good pragmatic test to make sure that here and now you're able to be of service to people around you, regardless of where you are in your path.
And is the converse possible? Can you, if you did only loving kindness, would you automatically, basically that would lead to contemplation and automatically lead to less suffering seeing the true nature of of reality, or as Buddha puts it. And then,
Yeah, I think that I think ultimately they're going to all lead there, but there's a question of the fact that you have to today you have to be around certain people, right? You have to deal with parents and colleagues and so on. So the one of the problems with just a loving kindness practice is that you can get attached to accumulating merit, in which case you're attached to there being some self here, right? That's being generous or is accumulating merit. So that's why if you're going into this emptiness practice, you're seeing that there really is no self upon which there can be a hook to hang merit or love, or the being the giver of loving kindness, the giver of generosity. I think it's just to me, it's a very elegant model or practice, because it keeps course correcting. It's in a bit of a dialectic, such that the emptiness practice allows for loving kindness to come from a deeper place of the heart. The heart space opening allows for there to be not just a basis for, but a deeper understanding of what's happening through this interior quest sorts.
and could you recommend a resource, because you, in these 4 sessions, you've done more of the contemplative inquiry? Could you recommend, is there a resource you'd recommend for loving kindness?
Yeah, there's a book I have right here. It's a very nice book called, I'll just read it. The Four Immeasurables, Practices to Open the Heart by B. Alan Wallace. That's one such. B. Alan Wallace, The Four Immeasurables. I mean, there are plenty of others. The Tibetans are very good about this, I think. So really any Tibetan Buddhist Rinpoche who's worth his salt should be talking about these things. But I found B. Alan Wallace to be someone who, given your kind of intellectual leanings, you seem like you have kind of strong intellectual leanings. This guy has a PhD and he was studied as a Tibetan Buddhist monk. So if you just Google B. Alan Wallace, you will find it, since he's a quite wonderful person here. I see that there's someone who's written a question. So thank you very much, Sid, for your question. So Luca you're very welcome. Luca's question is, this meditation practice takes time. That's correct. How can we handle instant rage flows, such as when you start a quarrel, a discussion with your partner, for example? Okay, so there are kind of 2 basic answers to give to that question. The first one, if I may say this from a Zen Buddhist perspective, it could be helpful to have a daily practice, a daily sit. The reason the daily sit is helpful is that it, at the level of ordinary practice, the ordinary daily affairs, it creates greater awareness of, or mindfulness. So you can actually begin to see rage or anger arising more readily in the context. So that's kind of an instrumental reason for meditating. It's not the fundamental reason, but the instrumental reason for meditating is that it helps us in our ethical practice throughout the course of the day. That's one of its fruits or benefits. So that would be the first thing I would say. You kind of want to get your life in order such that rage is less apt to arise in the first place. If it does arise in the form of anger, you're able to see it here rather than 10 or 20 minutes into a quarrel. At that point, you're fairly possessed in different ways described by some of these traditions. So that's point number 1. When it arises in the quarrel, there are a number of things that teachers have said here. For example, I'll mention 2 other things. The second thing I want to say is that when it's arising in the context, usually it's helpful to have a form of articulation. If your first language is Italian, then you'd use Italian. Mine being English, I would just say reacting or anger to myself or aloud. I want to be able to actually externalize it and show that I'm aware of the arising of anger here. Next, I'm actually going to keep adding to this because I come from a family with a father who was prone to anger. So this question I know pretty well. So the next one, I also have a mantra of sorts that I practice throughout the day. It's something like, don't get angry. That doesn't mean don't allow for that energy to rise, but it means don't react out of anger. So if I repeat that often enough, it starts to help me catch it. The Stoics also did something like this. It's a certain kind of memory device that is meant to allow there to be an in context understanding. So that's, I think, is a third thing I said. And the last one, which is a very big matter, is that the anger by my lights is always arising on behalf of a samskara, which is a false identity or an ego self. I'll give you one example. We're getting this is kind of a psychological inquiry. One example might be something like, I'm powerless. Okay. I'm powerless, that can arise first in the form of fear, then on top of fear comes anger. So usually what manifests itself is in the scene is just anger. If you can begin to actually trace it back to powerlessness, I'm powerless, then you have the opportunity to begin to dissolve the ego self. You're getting to the anger at its root, right? So when there is no I am powerless, there should be less of a cycle of repeating anger. And you should see that the anger itself, not linearly, but over time starts to subside. Let me make one other point, because I could talk about this forever. Sorry. The last one is that, a la what Sid was suggesting, that we also want to course correct by using what are called discursive meditations. Anytime throughout the day you say something like, I won't react out of enmity. I won't react out of my afflictions. I won't react out of anxiety. This sort of thing, said often enough, begins to recalibrate the finite mind so that it's actually more open, more supple, more available to other beings. So I hope that there's actually a lot more I could say about that, as you can imagine, but the point basically is to use a broader understanding to surround the particular occurrence of rage or anger in to look at it from a broader point of view, so that you're no longer stuck in the situation, contracted into being this angry ball of rage. So thank you very much for all these questions. I'm realizing that we only have 2 minutes left. So I want to say thank you all for coming over the course of these last 4 days. You're very welcome. Luca, thank you for coming over the course of these last 4 days. And let's end with I'll end with the correctly said 4 measurables today. So 4 measurables. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings rejoice in the well-being of others. And may all beings live in peace, free from greed and hatred. Okay, may all of you be peace. Take the best of care, everyone. We'll see you again. Okay, bye now.